Okay, and one more reminder, when you run out of one strip of plastic, the way you join is just really, I like to use a slip knot, whatever knot you like best, a good tight little knot, and that makes your market bag strong in the end. Okay, now it is possible to knit the whole market bag using this method, but I kind of prefer to go ahead and move to a circular needle when I get a certain amount on. Usually that would be a minimum of 2 inches. I've got a little more than that here. It's all up to you. As I said, you could do the whole market bag just on 2 needles if you wish, or you can change to the circular when you get a little bit on. The reason you need to get a few stitches on before you would change to circular is that otherwise it's too narrow and it crimps the cable of your needle. Okay? And here's the way to get these on, because remember, we're knitting in the round. So the first stitch can go on one needle, and then the back, those 2 stitches will be next to each other. So all the purl stitches go onto the front needle in my case, and all the knit go into the back. Whichever way you start, it doesn't matter, but once you pick one, all the purls will go on front or all the purls will go on back, and all the knits go on the other stitch. And you have to keep that straight, or you won't have knitting in the round when you're done. And now if you can just zoom out a little bit. And now you can see that my market bag has been knit in the round all along. If you made any errors, you'll have stringers that go in between. You can probably repair those by tying the plastic bag. But as you can see, I've been knitting in the round the whole time. Now at this point, I like to turn it stockinette side out, because that's sort of the way you knit on your circular needles, is stockinette side out. So I like to turn it inside out at that point. That also tends to, because all of your knots tend to be on the purl bump side, all of your joins are on the inside of the bag then, and will not show. Okay? Now I have ended up with my working yarn at the opposite end. All I need to do now is slip around until I'm at my working point again. And you can see it's a little tight to work with in this oval, and that's why I recommend starting using this technique instead of starting just flat out in the round. And there we go. I am now ready to finish this bag, knitting completely in the round. Alright, so now I have knit until, if I measure from my cast on here, and all the way up, I have just about 11 inches. You can make it up to 15 inches deep. I find 11 inches is good for me. It does stretch a lot, So if you make it too big, you're going to find that it's hanging down to your knees when you load it up and carry it. And I'll show you more about that in a minute. So at this point, now that I've got the length that I want, I'm at the beginning of my row here. I'm going to knit 4 stitches. And then I'm going to slip those 4 stitches, move this so it doesn't slide off, and I'm going to knit these 4 stitches, or slide these onto a stitch holder. Slide them off the needle onto the stitch holder, and I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and I'm going to take 4 more stitches. So I'll have a total of 8 stitches that are centered on the corner, or the start at one of the corner edges of the bag, the very beginning section of the bag. All right, and I'm just going to close that up. So after I have my first 8 stitches on a stitch holder, I'm going to go ahead and bind off 24 stitches. You want to bind off relatively loosely so that the top of your bag doesn't get closed. So that is 24 stitches that are bound off. Now I'm going to knit 8 stitches on. I'm going to knit 8 stitches, and those 8 stitches are going to go on a stitch holder yet again. Right, and this will be the other side of the handle where it attaches to the main part of the bag. So we will take these stitches and slide them onto a stitch holder. And I will bind off the rest of the stitches then up to the edge of the stitch holder, and there should be 24 total there. One trick that can help you bind off loosely is to do the following. When I slip the stitch over, I leave it on the end of the needle and I just ignore it. I go ahead and knit the next one for the next stitch, and that helps keep those loops looser. So if you have trouble binding off loosely, this will help. this last stitch, I'm just going to go ahead to my stitch marker knit this guy. Lift it over, and there I've bound off my second set of 24 stitches. Then I'm going to take these first 8 stitches and put them back on my needle. And at this point I need to knit in stockinette. Now I'm no longer in the round. That means I have to turn my work, or when I turn my work I have to purl back. Oops. So here I can see this is my knit side. And so I'll knit my 8 stitches. And then when I turn, I have to purl back. And you will continue like this, going back and forth, continuing in stockinette until you have a bag handle of the length that you want. And for me, that is just enough so that it can go over my shoulder and I can reach in and put things into it. I want to show you a couple of things about the knitted bag that will be important to how you decide to make your final measurements. In this case, this bag depth is about 11 inches. And I've made the shoulder strap, I haven't measured it, but I made it just big enough that it's close under my arm, so that if I am shopping and I pick up a can, there's a can of dog food, I can drop the can of dog food in without peeling it away from under my arm. And you can see with just 2 cans of dog food how low this is sitting on me. The handle stretches a lot, the bag stretches a lot. The more that you put in it, the more that it stretches, and that's good. But if you go with too long of a handle or too long of a bag, you can end up with a bag that is down at your knees very quickly. I have now knit my handle to about 25 inches from the start. And so you measure pretty much from your needle back to where you really start at the beginning of the bag, which is here at about 25. And you may wonder why I use stockinette here instead of just regular knitting. And the main reason I use stockinette is I like it to curl. I like it to curl for 2 reasons. It has a soft feel on your shoulder, and also all of these little bag ends from where you join your bags together go to the middle and they don't show. So those are the main reasons I like that. Now at this point I am going to do a 3 needle bind off to finish this off. That's a good strong knitted finish. You can graft it if you want. That is, it's equally strong to graft it, but grafting is harder, takes a little more time, and I'm ready for the bag to be done. And a 3 needle bind off will not show. Again, because you knit in stockinette, the 3 needle bind off will be towards the curled in part of the bag. Now to start my 3 needle bind off, first I need the stitches off of the stitch holder back onto a needle. And so I will get that done here. And the stitches sometimes pull a little tight when they've been on a stitch holder, so you may have to fight them a little bit to get them onto the full size 13 needle again. It doesn't help that the stitch holder's in there. When that comes out, they slide back a little bit easier. Okay, and the other thing is I want to be sure that my seam is on the inside of the handle. So I'm going to turn right sides together to do my 3 needle bind off. Of course, you have to have a 3rd needle. And you just go through the first stitch on each needle. Come through both, slide it off, knit my 2nd, go through the first stitch on the, work both of the first stitches, and then slip it over. Make the next first 2 stitches off of both needles together, and then pass it over and off. And then you can just break the plastic, tie it off, just make it a little bit shorter. You can weave that end in if you wish, but again, it's really not going to show because of the handle of the bag. This is the time then to go through and find any, you can see almost all of my ends have ended up on the purl bump side. That's just kind of how these things, how it works. It's part of the structure of the stitch. But if you find, you will find an occasional piece that sticks out a little bit, you can always kind of tuck those in. There are imperfections in the cutting of the bag. Some of those are going to stick out, and there may not be much you can do about those except cut them off if you wish. Here I actually have a couple of seams, or a couple of ends right at the edge. Again, you can weave those in if you want, but this is a grocery bag. It's a very functional item. Some people actually like to turn it inside out and use it this way, and consider the ends to be decorative bow sorts of things. I prefer it to be to the inside, but I don't bother to wind in little ends like this if it happens to be right on the edge, as this one is. And so there you have your grocery bag. There is a little bit of pucker here. The first time you put something of any weight in here, that's going to straighten out, and it's going to end up very similar to this bag, which has no pucker at all. Now, once you master this technique of knitting in the round on 2 needles, there are a lot of other things you can begin to do. Both of these projects were done by using the same technique. You can see the same starting point here. In this case, I used a little bit of Fair Isle. This is a cover for an iPad, and this is knit in cotton, and it is a soap saver. And it's knit again with the same way, with the same kind of cast on, knit on 2 needles in the round. So now that you've learned a new technique, you can use it to make all sorts of different projects. Thanks, bye-bye.